The date was June 1st, 2025. The airwaves crackled with an unusual intensity, even for the often fiery domain of cable news. Tonight, Newsmax was not just hosting another political segment, it was staging an ideological collision of monumental proportions. The anticipation was palpable across the nation as viewers tuned in, sensing that the discourse about to unfold would be more than mere political theater. It promised to be a genuine litmus test, a moment where two diametrically opposed worldviews would meet head-on, live and unscripted. A political earthquake was not just possible, it felt inevitable, simmering beneath the surface of polite introductions. The stakes for this debate were extraordinarily high, transcending the typical partisan sparring. This was not simply about scoring quick political points or delivering memorable soundbites for the next news cycle. Instead, what was on the line were foundational visions for the future of America, a deep chasm in how the nation's problems should be understood and its destiny shaped. Would it be a path of progressive transformation, as one contestant championed, or a return to principles that the other argued had made the nation strong? Millions of Americans watched, not just as casual observers, but as citizens deeply invested in the outcome, hoping to find clarity amid the cacophony of modern political discourse. As the studio lights blazed, host Jake Morrison, a seasoned moderator known for his attempts at fair play, introduced the two formidable figures who would occupy the stage. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, an unspoken acknowledgement of the ideological battle that was poised to erupt. On one side, a standard-bearer of the progressive left. On the other, a rising star of the conservative movement. The stage was meticulously set for a profound confrontation, a battle not just of wits or rhetoric, but of deeply held convictions about the very soul of the country and its trajectory forward. This encounter, many sensed, would be different from the usual televised squabbles. It was destined to be a defining moment, a crucible where abstract theories would be tested against the hard anvil of reality. The ensuing debate would do more than just highlight policy differences. It would expose the fundamental rifts in American society, the competing narratives struggling for dominance. The clash was imminent, and its reverberations were expected to be felt long after the studio cameras went dark, shaping conversations in homes and workplaces across the land for weeks, if not months to come. On one side stood Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, often known simply as AOC. She was the undisputed progressive firebrand, a charismatic voice who had risen meteorically within the Democratic Party. Champion of sweeping policies like the Green New Deal and a relentless advocate for what she termed social justice, AOC embodied the aspirations of a new generation of leftists. To her legion of followers, she was more than a politician. She was a truth teller, a revolutionary figure, challenging entrenched systems and speaking for the marginalized. Her rhetoric was bold, her vision transformative, aiming to reshape America from the ground up. On the other side was Caroline Leavitt, a dynamic and articulate conservative force. Famously the youngest White House press secretary in American history, Leavitt had quickly established herself as a prominent MAGA stalwart, unafraid to confront liberal orthodoxy. She represented a potent challenge to the prevailing progressive narrative. Armed not with platitudes but with hard data and a direct, no-nonsense communication style that resonated deeply with a significant portion of the electorate. Leavitt was not there to play defense. She was there to go on offense, representing those who felt their values were under siege. Their ideologies were not just different, they were fundamentally antithetical, representing two divergent paths for the nation. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez championed collectivist solutions, emphasizing systemic overhaul and the power of government intervention to achieve her vision of equity. Caroline Leavitt, conversely, advocated for individual liberty, the importance of traditional American values, and the efficacy of common-sense policies rooted in fiscal responsibility and limited government. The debate promised to lay these profound, irreconcilable differences bare for the entire nation to scrutinize, forcing a consideration of which path held more promise. The core distinction that would define the entire encounter was already clear before the first question was asked. One combatant, AOC, often spoke in the language of abstract ideals, of grand theories of equity and justice that, while sounding noble, frequently seemed disconnected from the practical realities faced by everyday Americans. The other, Leavitt, deliberately focused on the tangible, on the real-world impact of policies on families, communities, and the economy. This fundamental divergence in approach, idealism versus pragmatism, would become the central theme of the night, highlighting a critical choice facing the American public. The debate quickly ignited, true to expectations, and the first major flashpoint occurred over the charged issue of language itself, specifically the term Latinx. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, true to her progressive credentials, staunchly defended its use. She argued that Latinx was a necessary evolution, an inclusive term designed to promote equity and foster diversity within the Hispanic and Latino communities. According to her framework, adopting such language was a crucial step towards acknowledging non-binary individuals and dismantling outdated patriarchal linguistic structures. This was, in her view, progress manifest in vocabulary itself. Caroline Leavitt, however, was prepared for this line of argument and launched a swift, fact-based counterattack. Facts, as they say, are indeed stubborn things. Leavitt immediately cited compelling data from the reputable Pew Research Center. Their findings were stark. A significant 68% of Hispanic Americans do not use the term Latinx to describe themselves. More damningly, a substantial portion of this group actively rejects the term, finding it not inclusive but rather an offensive imposition by academic and political elites, disconnected from their lived experiences and cultural identity. To drive her point home with undeniable human impact, Leavitt introduced the story of Maria. Maria was not a statistic, but a real person, an Arizona small business owner of Mexican heritage. Leavitt recounted how Maria felt her rich Mexican culture, her language, and her identity were being systematically erased by the imposition of this artificial, anglicized term. This sentiment, Leavitt argued, was a key factor in Maria's decision to vote for Donald Trump. Furthermore, Leavitt pointed to a stark political shift. An 85% Latino district in Texas had recently swung Republican, a clear electoral repudiation of such out-of-touch progressive policies and linguistic policing. AOC attempted to parry, asserting that language shapes progress and that such changes are essential for societal advancement. But Leavitt delivered a powerful rebuttal. Maria wasn't trying to halt progress, she was passionately defending her identity and her cultural heritage against an unwelcome intrusion. The audience, both in the studio and watching at home, could palpably feel the chasm between AOC's abstract linguistic theory and the visceral personal impact Leavitt described. One side was clearly pushing an ideology, the other was defending a deeply felt cultural reality. The clash was immediate and set a combative tone for the remainder of the evening. The intense debate then pivoted to the equally contentious terrain of abortion rights and the language used to discuss them. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, ever the proponent of progressive terminology, vigorously advocated for the use of phrases like birthing peoples. This linguistic shift, she explained, was intended to be inclusive of transgender individuals and others who can carry a pregnancy but do not identify as women. In AOC's view, abortion rights were not exclusively women's rights, but belonged to everyone who can carry a pregnancy, necessitating a new, broader lexicon for a more enlightened age. Once again, Caroline Leavitt countered not with abstract theory, but with a direct appeal to common experience and empirical evidence. She introduced the story of Sarah, a dedicated nurse and hardworking single mother from Ohio. Sarah, Leavitt explained, felt profoundly alienated and even stripped of her fundamental identity as a woman by the term birthing peoples. For Sarah, and many like her, this was not an act of inclusion, but an act of erasure, diminishing the unique experiences of women. Leavitt then buttressed this anecdote with data from Rasmussen reports, indicating that a significant 65% of voters believe that such woke language actively undermines and confuses the core message of the abortion rights movement. Leavitt further highlighted her own powerful engagement on this issue through social media, a tool she wielded with remarkable effectiveness. She described an Instagram post where she directly asked women how they felt about this redefined language surrounding abortion rights. The post, she noted, received an astonishing 3 million views, and the comments section was flooded with responses. The sentiment was overwhelmingly clear. Women wanted to be called women, not birthing peoples, not people with uteruses, not menstruators, just women. The demand was for simple, clear, and respectful recognition of their identity, not a clinical, ideologically driven redefinition. With this foundation laid, Leavitt posed a direct and challenging question to Ocasio-Cortez. Were these women like Sarah who felt their identity was being diminished, fundamentally wrong for wanting to preserve their distinct identity as women? AOC's response was notably hesitant and evasive. I will consider their feedback. It was not an affirmation of their feelings, nor an expression of understanding, but a carefully worded deflection. Leavitt seized on this, asserting that the Trump campaign, in contrast, focused on the practical protection of women's rights, without resorting to alienating terminology that served only to confuse and divide the very people it claimed to support. Section 5. Education in Crisis Equity Rhetoric versus Failing Students. The focus of the fiery debate then shifted to the critical issue of education policy, another area where the ideological chasm between the two participants was starkly evident. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez passionately spoke about the paramount importance of equity in the educational system. She issued a compelling call for substantial new investments in public education infrastructure, advocating for fair and increased pay for teachers, and emphasizing the need for safe, supportive learning environments. Her argument was that these measures were essential to ensure truly equal opportunity for every child, regardless of their background. Laudable and noble aspirations on the surface of the discussion. Carolyn Leavitt, however, immediately challenged this narrative by presenting a starkly different picture, armed with cold, hard data that painted a grim portrait of current educational outcomes. Democratic policies, she contended with conviction, were not fostering equity, but were, in fact, leading directly to widespread student failure. She cited a comprehensive national report covering the years 2020 to 2023, which revealed a shocking decline. 13-year-olds' average math scores had plummeted by a staggering 9 points, while their reading scores had fallen by 4 points. This, Leavitt emphasized, represented the largest such decline in academic performance in over half a century. This was not equity in action, it was an educational crisis demanding urgent attention. Leavitt then took aim at specific policies that she argued protected underperforming teachers at the expense of students. To illustrate her point, she shared the poignant story of Lisa, a concerned parent from New Hampshire. Lisa's son, Leavitt explained, had struggled academically and emotionally due to being trapped in a classroom with a teacher who was demonstrably ineffective but shielded from accountability by prevailing system protections. A study from the respected Brookings Institute, Leavitt noted, lent strong empirical support to this concern, showing that retaining underperforming teachers can reduce student learning outcomes by as much as 15% in public schools. As a constructive alternative, Leavitt highlighted that the Trump 2.0 administration would champion charter schools and robust vocational training programs, practical solutions focused on results. Once again, Leavitt demonstrated her adept use of social media to amplify the voices of ordinary citizens. She referenced a recent post where she asked parents for their unvarnished opinions on the state of education. The response was overwhelming, with the post quickly garnering over 4 million views. The consensus among parents was clear. They desired better teachers, more accountability, and an educational focus on practical skills that would prepare their children for the future. They wanted tangible results, not more empty rhetoric. When Carolyn Leavitt directly asked AOC if she was truly listening to these concerned parents, the now familiar, non-committal refrain was offered. "I will consider their feedback." The chasm between policy talk and parental concerns seemed to widen with each exchange. Section 6. Immigration humanitarian ideals collide with American realities. The debate inevitably turned to the deeply divisive and emotionally charged issue of immigration policy, a topic that consistently exposes the raw nerves of American political life. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez approached the subject by framing it primarily as a humanitarian crisis, a matter of moral urgency. She passionately called for the dismantling of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an agency she and many on the left view as overly punitive. In its place, she envisioned creating a profoundly welcoming and streamlined system, extending open arms to all individuals seeking refuge or aspiring to a better life in the United States. Her vision was clearly rooted in compassion and a belief in America's role as a sanctuary. Caroline Leavitt, however, immediately countered this idealistic portrayal by presenting a starkly different and more sobering reality. Open immigration policies, she declared with firm conviction, directly harm American citizens and legal residents. To substantiate this claim, she cited official data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. These figures revealed an overwhelming surge at the southern border, with over 2.5 million illegal immigration encounters recorded between 2021 and 2024 alone. Numbers of this magnitude, Leavitt argued, do not lie and paint a picture of a system at its breaking point, far from the orderly process AOC envisioned. The situation, she insisted, was simply unsustainable. To add a human dimension to the statistics, Leavitt shared the story of Carlos, a Mexican-American construction worker residing in Texas. Carlos, a legal resident and hard-working taxpayer, had recently lost his job. The reason? He was displaced by contractors who opted to hire cheaper, illegal immigrant labor, undercutting local wages and job security. Leavitt further bolstered her argument with data from the Department of Homeland Security, which indicated that crimes related to illegal immigration in border states had alarmingly risen by 20% over the preceding 3 years. In direct contrast, she reminded the audience, the Trump 2.0 administration was committed to strengthening border control and prioritizing national security. Leavitt then pointed to the massive public engagement with her X post discussing current immigration policies, which had received an astounding 5 million views at the time of the debate, a figure later updated backstage to 6 million. The overwhelming sentiment expressed in the thousands of responses was crystal clear. Americans wanted secure borders and protection for their jobs and communities. When Leavitt directly asked Ocasio-Cortez if she had taken the time to read these heartfelt pleas from ordinary citizens, AOC once again responded with her now standard line, "I will consider their feedback." Later in the exchange, AOC reiterated her call for humane reform, stating that immigrants are an integral part of the American dream. Leavitt's devastating summary of the exchange resonated powerfully. One side speaks of ideals, the other speaks of priorities. Section 7. Backstage aftermath, triumph, and turmoil. Once the intense debate concluded and the bright studio cameras finally switched off, the real, unvarnished drama began to unfold backstage, away from the public eye. Within Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's camp, the atmosphere was palpably tense, verging on disarray. An advisor, his face visibly pale and etched with concern, was overheard admitting to a colleague, "Leavitt caught us completely off guard tonight." It was a stark admission. They clearly had not anticipated the relentless barrage of specific data, the effective use of personal anecdotes, or Leavitt's unwavering focus on the practical, real-world impact of AOC's proposed policies. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself appeared visibly shaken by the encounter, a rare sight for the usually confident and unflappable progressive star. She candidly acknowledged her surprise at her opponent's preparedness. "I genuinely didn't expect her to be so thoroughly prepared with that much material," she conceded to her inner circle. The formidable confidence that typically radiated from her was noticeably diminished, replaced by a more somber and reflective demeanor. Her team, sensing the shift in momentum, immediately began suggesting a strategic reassessment. An idea for an immediate live online event, intended to spin the narrative and rally her base, was quickly and decisively declined. The pressing need was for damage containment, not further amplification. The scene in Caroline Leavitt's quarters, just down the corridor, could not have been more different. An atmosphere of elation and confidence filled the air, thick with the scent of victory. Her team was jubilant, exchanging high fives and congratulatory remarks. Leavitt, calm but clearly energized, was checking her phone, a smile playing on her lips as she noted that her viral immigration post had surged past the 6 million views mark during the debate itself. Key members of the Trump campaign were already present, offering their enthusiastic congratulations and praising her performance. The energy was electric, a vibrant and stark contrast to the somber crisis management mood prevailing in the AOC camp. As if to punctuate the moment, a text message pinged on Leavitt's phone. It was from a highly influential Trump ally, a figure close to the former president. The message was brief, direct, and carried immense weight. "The president is impressed." Leavitt allowed herself a broader smile. This victory was more than just winning a single debate. It was a profound validation of her strategic approach, her messaging, and her ability to connect with the concerns of everyday Americans. She expressed her firm resolve to her team. They would continue to tirelessly amplify the MAGA message, focusing on the issues that truly mattered to the people. Section 8. The digital referendum, social media speaks volumes. The powerful shockwaves emanating from the Newsmax debate stage rippled almost instantaneously across the vast and often tumultuous digital landscape. Back at the Newsmax studios, even network staff, many of whom had witnessed countless political confrontations, were privately conceding Caroline Leavitt's clear dominance in the exchange. They recognized that they had just broadcast a political masterclass, where sharp arguments, meticulously backed by credible evidence and deeply relatable human stories, had decisively cut through the usual partisan noise and rhetorical fog. The online world, the great digital public square, was about to confirm their internal assessments in an undeniably dramatic and widespread fashion. Caroline Leavitt's social media accounts experienced an explosive surge in activity. Her already substantial follower count, noted at 728,000 before the debate, began to climb rapidly as new supporters flocked to her platforms. A concise post-debate message, skillfully summarizing her key points on national security, American jobs, and educational reform, garnered thousands of shares and likes within mere minutes of being posted. Crucially, the hashtag #Leavitt began trending nationally on X, not as a focus of controversy or attack, but as a banner for overwhelming grassroots support from a newly energized and engaged conservative base. Meanwhile, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's normally vibrant and highly active social media presence faced an uncharacteristic and challenging storm of criticism and skepticism. A post she made shortly after the debate, attempting to pivot the conversation towards broader, more abstract themes of social justice and systemic change, received a notably tepid and almost muted reaction from her followers. The usual enthusiastic chorus of digital approval was conspicuously quiet, largely drowned out by a wave of pointed questions, direct challenges, and critical comments, many of which directly echoed the potent arguments Leavitt had so effectively deployed during the debate. The digital tide, it seemed, had decisively turned. Mainstream media outlets, each with their own ideological leanings, visibly struggled to frame the debate's outcome in a way that didn't acknowledge Leavitt's strong performance. Fox News, predictably, blared the headline, "Caroline Leavitt overpowers AOC in fiery debate showdown." One of their prominent commentators went further, hailing Leavitt as the new dynamic face of the MAGA movement. Even CNN, an outlet often highly critical of conservatives and the Trump administration, was compelled to admit in its analysis that Leavitt came exceptionally prepared, using data and compelling real-life stories to systematically undermine AOC's arguments. Reports suggested that MSNBC found it particularly difficult to mount a spirited or convincing defense for Ocasio-Cortez in the debate's immediate aftermath. Section 9. Conclusion. Lessons forged in the fires of debate. The Newsmax debate between Caroline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was far more than just another fleeting political spectacle in the endless news cycle. It served as a profound and practical lesson in the art and science of effective political communication. More significantly, it powerfully underscored the enduring impact of connecting with voters on a tangible, relatable level, addressing their immediate concerns, rather than abstract theories. Caroline Leavitt's meticulously crafted strategy proved to be devastatingly effective, not just in scoring debate points, but in resonating with a broad audience by consistently prioritizing practical concerns over ideological pronouncements. The highly charged encounter served to starkly highlight the ever-widening and concerning disconnect between the pursuit of abstract ideological purity, often found in academic and activist circles, and the complex lived realities of millions of ordinary Americans. While Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez eloquently spoke of grand systemic changes, the necessity of inclusive language, and utopian visions of justice, Caroline Leavitt countered by speaking directly about jobs lost to unfair competition, cultural identities feeling threatened by linguistic imposition, and educational standards demonstrably declining. These latter issues are precisely the bread-and-butter concerns that keep average citizens awake at night, worrying about their families and their future. Leavitt's masterful and disciplined use of verifiable data, ranging from Pew Research Center findings to official government statistics, combined seamlessly with poignant and memorable personal anecdotes, the stories of Maria, Sarah, Lisa, and Carlos, created an undeniably compelling and persuasive narrative. Her performance was not merely about winning arguments in a vacuum, it was fundamentally about validating the legitimate concerns and anxieties of a significant portion of the electorate who often feel ignored by the political elite. Her astute and consistent social media engagement further amplified this connection, transforming passive viewers into active participants in a larger conversation. The ultimate and most enduring lesson to be drawn from this electrifying and consequential confrontation is unmistakably clear. In the arena of public opinion, hard facts, when skillfully paired with genuine empathy and a clear understanding of everyday struggles, will frequently triumph over even the most passionately articulated or intellectually elaborate ideals. Effective leaders, those who genuinely seek to serve, must cultivate the ability to listen intently, adapt their approaches, and consistently address the concrete, practical priorities of the people they aspire to represent. The echoes of this particular debate, and the truths it laid bare, will undoubtedly reverberate throughout the American political landscape for a long time to come.